Hi, this is a follow-up video to my previous video, 4 Kinds of Ethics. In the last video, I talked about 4 kinds of ethics being, one would be subjectivism or subjectivist ethics, deontological ethics, utilitarian ethics, and then natural law ethics. And I'm going to rehash a lot of what I talked about in the first video and hopefully make it more clear and kind of sum it all up a little bit better. Let's go ahead and rehash what a subjectivist ethics is. This is an ethics that is a non-cognitive based ethic. Now, what that kind of means is it's an irrational ethic. It is not something you would reason out. You wouldn't say to someone, hey, it's right for you to put your kids in school. You would say, no, I feel like I want to put my kids in school. It would be everything that you do is kind of judged by whether you feel like doing it or not. So again, the mode of operation in subjectivist ethics is to follow your heart or your desires, whatever you desire. The good in subjectivist ethics is considered whatever you want it to be. For someone who has the desire to commit crimes, that poses a problem in subjectivist ethics. According to the ethic, it would be right and good for them to commit their crimes, however heinous. Okay. Again, proponent of subjectivist ethics was David Hume. The justification for subjectivist ethics is lacking. An example would be if you look at gamblers or if you look at addicts. Compulsive gamblers and addicts, whether it be to a chemical, even people who are addicted to relationships, they follow their heart. They do what they want. They go after their desires, and their life ends up in shambles. So if asked at the end, would you have done it differently, they'd say yes. Well, at least I think they would. We can make mistakes. Our heart doesn't really think for us. It's kind of just there, and you can't really trust it to. You can trust the heart in some things, but when you make major life decisions, like a gambler who's compulsively thinking, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna take the casino for all they're worth," or I'm gonna become rich by doing this. They're not real. It's kind of irrational, and it can be wrong because it's irrational. So that's subjectivist ethics. The next one, deontological ethics. Again, that is based on an intrinsic theory of value. Intrinsic theory would mean that there's something that's valuable on its own, apart from your own personal wants, needs, or desires. It's where you follow a rule or a set of rules. And they're given to the justification for the rules themselves is really lacking. Gosh, you've got over 400 religions in the world, and they each claim to have some kind of intrinsic value. The example would be the Ten Commandments in Christianity and Judaism. Some of the dictates in the Quran for Muslim or Islam. There's too many to list, but each one kind of has its own flavor, and we're supposed to buy into one of them at the expense of the other 399 without justification. So let's see. The good in the deontological ethics is taken to exist on its own, independent of your individual needs. A proponent would be Immanuel Kant. I mentioned that before. He would say that it's good to be honest, even with a murderer or a rapist asking for where your mother or your sister or your wife lives, because the good is in following the rule and not in the outcome. A negative example for deontological ethics would be the Jonestown mass suicide and murder in South America. There was a socialist cult led by Jim Jones, and they ended up killing themselves and getting killed because of some good that was not related to each person's life. So that's an example of deontological ethics gone awry. If you say that a cult leader or someone in charge makes the rules to follow, and one of the rules happens to be you have to end your own life, um, that, without questioning the rule, you follow it, and that's where the value is in deontological ethics. So that's a negative example of that. The next one was utilitarian ethics. I mentioned it's an unprincipled consequentialism. It's where you look at the end of the action without ever justifying the ends. So an end is just assumed to be valuable, and then the actions are, moved back and forth until you can maximize that end, whatever the end is. Kind of reminds me of the Jonestown Massacre, but let's keep rehashing it. Maximize some person's notion of utility or benefit. That's what a utilitarian tries to do. Now, when I say some person's notion of utility and benefit, I mean just that. It's somebody's notion, without justification, of what utility is or what benefit is. And often you see politicians using this argument. We've got to redistribute the wealth, or we've got to maximize this, maximize that. And everyone is considered to be a player, and therefore everyone is up for some kind of sacrifice or benefit. And it really is a process that's open to like corruption and everything. It's basically it's a collectivist kind of ethic, where you have to take the whole, the end process can be the whole society, and then once that society's good is considered to be the aim we're all working for, then each one of us is expendable. The good in utilitarian ethics is considered to be a property, not a relation. If the good is a property, it can be divided and dispensed. That is, we'll see it later, that's incorrect. That in order for something to be good, it has to be good for someone or something, for some purpose. So things aren't good primarily, they're good because of other things. A proponent of utilitarian ethics is John Stuart Mill. Again, justification is lacking. An example is the mass starvation and some killing, millions upon millions of people ended their lives prematurely in the 20th century in centrally planned Russia and centrally planned Red China. Okay, look that up. See how many people died because they were trying to maximize the good. Okay, when you try to make a big equation by somebody's notion of what good is, whether it be communal farms or whatever, check the results and the history of that. Utilitarianism has a lot of blood on its hands. The last one was natural law. It's a principled consequentialism, to be differentiated from utilitarianism, which is unprincipled. Being a principled consequentialism, it has to take into account the nature of an acting entity. I mentioned fish in water, fish out of water. Out of water is bad, in water is good for a fish, but not for a monkey. And that was probably a bad example, because animals tend to be are amoral. They don't deliberate between life-threatening and life-sustaining and fulfilling actions. They just follow instinctual patterns. If you look at animals, generation after generation, the same species of animal does the same behavior. Beavers don't make dams differently today than they did 1,000 years ago. Spiders don't make webs differently. It's instinctual. Without that deliberation, they're really not moral creatures. Humans, because we have a decision to make, a deliberative decision what to do with our lives, and you can just look at the jungle and look at civilization, and you can see humans aren't a creature that makes the same, builds dams the exact same way generation after generation, or weaves webs the exact same way generation after generation. We are free agents. We're making changes. We're doing things differently. This is the moral realm. We can now do things differently for the good or do things differently for the worse. We can increase the pain and suffering in the world or improve our fulfillment and happiness. Having that choice is what makes us moral beings. So in natural law, the good is a relation of an organism to its environment, in particular the human organism, because that's the organism. That needs to make choices, deliberative choices about welfare. I don't like that word, but our well-being. Okay, it's the good under natural law. Being a relation, it cannot be divided up and dispensed with like the utilitarian ethics. You can't effectively do that. So the whole life of each individual organism is considered to be, the focus of the morality. And if you think about it, a moral agent is going to make some choices, and those choices are going to affect some lives, primarily their life. And so the morality would be a code of action aimed at uncovering and discovering what kinds of things can we do as the kind of creature we are in order to become fulfilled, or live a pleasing, satisfying life. Ayn Rand would say a life of non-contradictory joy.